You know when we started this, when we started this, you were like, "Oh, every episode I'm going to do a live from," and then insert a
I
weird or
don't
wacky
I don't have a
reference.
place. Okay, you know what? Here we go. Live from my way too goddamn hot office. This is Best Care Anywhere. Does that work for you? Does that work
Um,
for you, Ethan? Are you happy? Are you satisfied?
Satisfied? No. Happy? Almost never. Okay with it going forward? We'll see.
All right.
We'll see.
I
We'll
don't I
see.
don't know I don't know how much of the last minute is going to stay in the episode, but welcome to Best Care Anywhere. Uh that's all I got. It is once again too hot to exist.
Far, far too hot.
Far too hot to exist in the state of California, and it's only going to get hotter, which I'm sure is going to not cause any problems, and everything will be fine, and we'll all be fine.
For all
How
our
are you
listeners
guys?
out there, just be aware that Anthony here is actually Frosty the Snowman's cousin, and Jasky is nothing more than three ice cubes in a trench coat, so their heat scales are a little bit skewed.
I'm sorry.
That's an accurate
What?
description of me,
Yeah,
100%.
that's fair, actually. Of Jasky, that is 100% correct. How are you guys doing, other than melting?
Um, well, I got locked out of my Gmail account, so just dealing with that.
That's cool. That's very cool.
Yeah,
Very pog.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
very
yeah.
crispy today.
Oh, thank you, thank you. We got the new mic set up. We got the
I
fancy. Not sponsored. Not sponsored. I legally am required to disclaim that I am not sponsored by Logitech or Blue Yeti in any fashion. Although I wish I was. That would be amazing.
Yeah,
But this is
why don't we get sponsored
Yes,
by
we wish
ah
we were
yes,
sponsored by
yes, us.
us.
Yeah.
Communism.
But this is the I'm coming to you live from the Blue Yeti X. And is it like I'm in the room with you? Can you hear me on either
I
side of you?
oh, I hate that you're doing that.
Oh, isn't it great?
No,
But yeah, it's
you're gonna
honestly
make me
like
spend. You're gonna make me spend $200 on a new microphone. You know that,
I
right?
haven't even gotten to the good parts yet. So
Oh God.
taking a step back, right? Is this a good microphone? Well, I paid 130 for it. So that's how much I paid for it. And at that price point, yes, I would say it's an excellent microphone. The live LED monitoring on the front is very handy. I can see I'm just barely hitting the yellow right now, so that's pretty good. The fact that
Mhm.
I can switch between adjusting gain, adjusting if you plug your headphones into it, you can live monitor what you sound like. You can adjust the volume of that, and then you can adjust the balance between the volume of hearing your own voice and the volume of computer audio going to the headset. You can adjust how much it favors one or the other.
Yeah, the just
Yeah,
getting off the rails of our Mash podcast real quick. The nice thing I've noticed the last couple years, especially because of the pandemic and everyone needing a home office, the barrier to entry to doing stuff like
it's gone down
YouTube,
a
live
lot.
streaming, podcasts, it's gone down a lot, and I think that's really cool, honestly. But
Yeah,
that's a
yeah,
story.
definitely.
That's a discussion for another time.
Yeah, it's a welcome change. But yes, anyway, if you want a good microphone, Blue Yetis. I mean, there's a reason why everyone recommends them. They're not bad. I mean, there's other options out there, of course. Don't get me wrong, but
I mean, yeah,
it works.
long term, a USB microphone is not the best solution, but
No,
for how good you sound, worth it to me.
because here's the thing, right? All I did is I plugged in this mic, and then I went to the Logitech software and I clicked on a preset that I liked. I have done nothing else to tinker with the audio. I have not played around with any levels, any sound filters, nothing like that. This is a very plug and play solution for a very high quality professional sounding microphone. So, if that's what you're looking for, sure. But there's a lot of different options out there, and this one probably isn't the best one for you. And that's okay.
Look for Jasky's Tech Review podcast coming soon.
Oh my god, I would love something like that. But anyway,
And you
this is
have
a
the microphone for
Mashcast.
it. This is a
Oh,
Mashcast, but we do
oh,
have to
I do.
acknowledge, we do have to, yeah, now that I've told you that, you're going to think about it every
God,
day.
I will. I'm gonna be sitting in a hot tub for the next 4 nights, thinking about nothing but, man, I could start
Yeah,
my own tech
we're all
podcast.
about to. We're all about to. We're all
podcast.
about to. We're all three. Again, I don't know how much of this is going to stay in the episode. Probably not much, but all three of us have been big world travelers as of late, or
Big travel
are
energy.
or
Yeah.
are or will be traveling when this podcast does air. I know I've got a hike coming up between now and the next episode, so if there's not a episode on season 1, episode 5, I died off in the wilderness somewhere.
Hell
Jasky is
yeah.
going.
Oh.
Jasky is taking some sort of sabbatical to places unknown, and
I mean, by the time this game comes out, I'll already be back, so it's fine.
True.
Well,
Yeah.
we're not saying that to protect your anonymity. You genuinely haven't told us. You just allude to
No, I know where
visiting
he's
James.
going. He
Damn it! I'm
absolutely
sorry,
has
Wilson.
told us, and you either forgot or are trying to make a really bad story out of it.
I'm going to South Lake Tahoe, and I'm so excited.
Well, friends,
Yeah.
I have taken a break from my rambles through the wooden plains to come at you live from my Unabomber Airstream trailer somewhere in the depths of Kansas. To my right is a guitar that was stolen from a Mexican pawn shop. To my left are my vagabond boots that smell absolutely rancid, and there is nowhere I'd rather be.
Okay, but I thought Kansas was flat and didn't have any depth.
Well, I can't rebuke that in any way, so I'm just going to glaze over it. Yeah, I've been a traveling boy. I took a plane out to New York. I took a train north from New York to Vermont, and then I took a plane back from Vermont here, all over the span of 5 days. And
Nice.
they figured out my scheme and charged me $45 for parking at the airport, and that's the big takeaway of this. The parking lot, big parking lot, is out to get you.
I
Big
mean, I'd
parking
rather
lot.
pay. Personally, I'm one of those people. It's like I'll pay the $45 to have my own personal vehicle at the airport when I get back, as opposed to having to try to coordinate getting home.
Well,
But
it's not
that's
bad.
just
It's
me.
a 3-hour drive from the airport to my current residence, and that's a 3-hour car ride gets awkward, you know.
Yeah.
But says the man who drove 27 miles practically all at once to get to where he is. Anyway, you mentioned to us while you were traveling, you did not understand the hype of New York.
I got to be honest. I did not. I'm really glad I went. There were definitely some beautiful parts, but it was hard to breathe. My lungs genuinely hurt after, walking for an extended period of time. The whole place smells like piss. Um, I was accosted by several homeless men. You know,
Cool.
I
Very
mean,
neat.
yeah. What else is there to say?
Probably lots, but I don't think I really want to hear about it if that's how New York was.
No, it was
Right.
much better than that. I'm just tired and cranky and here to do nothing more than bitch and moan about New York on this MASH podcast. Future Anthony is going to be so upset with us for going 13 minutes in our MASH podcast without talking about MASH.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm 6 minutes of that, so no, not really.
Yeah. But
You've
it's
also been
fine.
traveling.
We've
I
all
wanna
I'm about to
connect
leave.
with you. Yeah. This literally is the only time in the last from a week ago to a week from now where we will all three be on a Discord call together, because I'm not coming back till Monday, and I probably won't be getting on Monday. So anyway,
we will have a lot to catch up on.
breathe. I'm already thinking about the fact that I need to automate the uploading of the video, social media, and the audio of the podcast, and I'm very stressed about it. Anyway, namaste. Take a breath, recollect
Anywhoosy.
ourselves.
Yes. Back to MASH.
Back to MASH.
Chief
So-
Surgeon Who.
Chief Surgeon Who. So, my obligatory give props to the writers and directors. Chief Surgeon Who, of course, season 1, episode 4, aired on October 8th, 1972, written by Larry Gelbart and director E.W. Swackhammer.
Do you think that stood for
Wilson?
Wilson?
Actually, in my research, it's Egbert. and some German name like Weingarten or something like that. Egbert Wingardium Leviosa, something like that. I don't have the page I saw it on.
Egbert
yeah, it's
Wingardium Leviosa
it's a
Swackhammer. Is that
Swackhammer.
his name?
Something like that.
That
Oh
It's
dear
folk song,
I
Christ.
can't even. It was so hard to find. I don't know that I could find where I found that information again. Honestly. Yeah. He has a lot of directing credits through television
Okay.
and Hollywood, Murder She Wrote, a whole bunch of other stuff. L.A.
Yeah.
Where is a lot of episodes of Law and Order. But yeah,
Very nice.
lots of writing credits, and weirdly, we'll get into this because this is a really good episode. This is, I believe, the only episode of MASH he directed.
that
The
is
only
really
episode?
too bad.
The only episode, the one. This
Yeah.
is it.
That is
So-
too bad.
That is too bad because this is a really good episode. One of our fans, I'll read his full tweet later, but he called this almost a second pilot, and that is the most
Ooh.
like
Ooh, that is
accurate
bad.
description. When I read that, I'm like, that is the most accurate description of this episode because yeah, the pilot was like our introduction to the show in general. This pilot feels more like this episode feels more like a pilot for what MASH wants to become. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like the first pilot was for the network to see. This episode is the pilot for here's what we want to do. So yeah. Well, let's get into it. Chief Surgeon Who, get through the intro of the show.
Opening, pan out,
Yeah.
interior, the swamp.
Feet.
The swamp. Feet.
I say that because literally the first thing that pops up on screen are Trapper's
just
feet. And yep.
Feet.
On that note, this comes up a lot. You'll see the guys soaking their feet or talking about how much their feet hurt. They stand for 8 to 12 to 14, sometimes 20 hours at a time in surgery. And I do not like thinking about that. That sounds awful.
Neither do their arches. Yeah.
I mean, good lord, I can't even think about the longest I've stood, but I know it does not hold a candle to that.
Because like even at camp, like for my job, I'm up on my feet most of the time when I'm up at camp because I'm a range safety officer. I need to be walking the line, making sure people are doing that. But even then, I'm able to about every 15 minutes or so to sit over the course of what, like 6 hours of 7 hours a day doing that. Still, that is pales in comparison to what these guys are doing. But
Yeah.
anyway, so they're in the swamp. Frank is being real Frank. Like
He
is
starts
extra
out
Frank.
extremely. It's very clear that they told Frank before the show, "Hey, you're at like a 6 most of the time. Bring it up to a 9 for this episode. We want all of the Frank."
But here's the thing. I think they told that to every actor. This episode feels
It's got
like
energy. It's got big energy.
this episode has big energy. Hawkeye is very much Alan Alda is very much bringing everything to the table as Hawkeye. Trapper is, or Wayne Rogers bringing everything to the table as Trapper. Frank is full on Frank. Margaret's full on Margaret. Henry even. McLean Stevenson even. Henry's a little more fleshed out. This episode feels like the show is firing on all cylinders. For the first of these first 4 episodes, this one feels like they got it. They got the motor humming, and I really like it. But yeah, Frank is writing his patients back in Indiana so they don't forget him because he had his own private practice. And
what's up, front doc?
I hate that
Little joke.
Almost stillborn, which is I didn't know what that phrase meant until I was about 16, and I'm like, huh, like, oh, it's stillborn, like it's literally fresh and kind of useless. Nope, it means it died on arrival, and I'm like, oh, okay, Hawkeye, chill, throw some chill in there.
Savage medical jokes. Dang.
Well, that's what happens when you're accused of swilling gin. I understand.
Okay, hang on.
Yeah.
So let's slow down a second because again, kind of like I forget that To Market's the second episode of the season. I forget that this little scene is still in the very beginning of the show's history, because this little interaction about the swilling gin and the martini is one of my favorite little scenes in the swamp, bar none, hands down, the entire series. Frank tells Hawkeye and Trapper, "Oh, do you have nothing better to do than to lie around and swill gin?" And Hawkeye indignantly gets up,
let me take this one.
and of course,
Swill gin? Sir, I have sipped, lapped, and taken gin intravenously, but I have never swilled.
Alan Alda is really good. They give Hawkeye several little, not soliloquies because they're not quite that long, but little like tiny little mantras.
Yeah.
Yes, and that mean nothing, but he delivers them so well. One of my favorite ones, and this is a more famous one of his, is "I will not carry a gun" in season 5. "I'll carry your books, I'll carry your shoes, I'll carry your torch, I'll carry on, carry over, carry Grant Cash, and he just goes on this whole like soliloquy about he won't carry a firearm, and it's hilarious. But yeah, this is kind of the first little Hawkeye useless soapbox we get, is I do not swill gin. And then I love his formula for the perfect martini. You pour 6 jiggers of gin and drink it while staring at Lorenzo Schwartz, the inventor of vermouth. Which means he is basically just drinking straight gin.
Yep.
Which, not basically, they're drinking straight gin.
He's just drinking straight gin, yeah.
And mind you, it's not even like good gin. They have made this in the last day.
It is parentheses, quotation marks, gin, quotation marks, parentheses.
This is the stuff that made moonshiners blind in Prohibition, like.
Pretty much. No, but this is one of the scenes that makes me go like, okay, this show is starting to find its flow, so to speak. And I like it.
Yeah.
So Frank's riding home to his patients so they don't remember him. And Frank, we start to see his character get a little more fleshed out. He's not just, straight-laced, he's higher ranking, so therefore he can be kind of a dick. He's also being a doctor for maybe not the right reasons. He's like, I have a $35,000 house and 2 cars. And it's like, you were still working in a hospital. It's like, yeah, I'm a doctor. Like, so we start to get a little bit more Frank being
Frank.
Not just Frank, but a genuine kind of piece of crap. And he'll get worse as time goes on, but we're starting to get kind of the fleshing out of, oh, Frank's terrible on many different levels, not just the base annoying ones.
Yes.
So
actually an antagonist. I think this is the episode that they clearly define who is the antagonist and who is the protagonist in very no nonsense terms. And that's this episode. I mean, it was already kind of established in the first one, but like things were still kind of nebulous. It was still the early moments of the MASH universe. Gases were still oozing, plasma was still forming. Things are now settling down.
Tune in next week for Jasky's additional podcast, The Cosmos. Wait, that name's taken. Shit.
Yeah, that's copyrighted.
Please don't sue us. Please don't sue
us. Oh no.
They have to find me first.
You literally told us where you were at the beginning of this episode.
Yeah, but it might get cut. It might not. I don't know. I don't have
Who's to say?
Who's to say? So we get into the operating room, and this is one of our more active OR scenes so far in the show. Like, it's not just, oh, they're operating and it's a scene. It just happens to be the scene they're in for a conversation. No, this is more of we are actively in surgery doing stuff. Like we had, like in the opening of To Market, that was like the catalyst for the plot. Was they had one patient on one table and they just walked out with him open. And then I think we had the OR scene in the first episode. But this is more of an active, patients are coming in and out, things are happening OR scene that we get to see, which is important because go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I love the opening shot where it's the rolling camera going down the OR, and then it settles on, front to back, spear chucker, Trapper, or I'm sorry, a spear chucker, Frank, Trapper, and then Hawkeye. It's just such a great scene.
And despite, so like watching that scene right now, it's very clear like the OR doesn't have a back wall. Like 100% you're looking at it's like that the way they are able to get that shot is the OR does not have a back wall. But
Oh yeah.
it's filmed so well. I don't think, except for right now when I'm addressing it because I have the scene paused and I'm looking at it, I don't think I've ever really noticed that the sets are sets. Does that make sense? Even though I'm pointing it out now, they always shoot it so naturally and with such good cinematography that yeah, sometimes you catch it, but overall it's really clean. But
Yeah, no, I mean
us,
it always feels very real. The
yeah,
sets always feel very like, yeah, that's actually a canvas tent in the middle of the desert. Like, yeah.
yeah. So operating and things are getting a little hot and heavy. Hawkeye is trying to get a patient's kidney back in order.
Things are getting heated.
Something that we didn't know until now. Spear Trucker is a surgeon.
Yeah, but that was never really showed before, was it?
Yeah,
It was
in the movies and the book, he is actually, and he says something in this scene. I don't know if you guys picked up on it. He says, "Hawk, I need help in this abdomen. Anything outside the skull, I'm dead." He's a brain surgeon. He is canonically supposed to be a brain surgeon, but you would never know that from the show.
I did
So,
not actually catch on to that. I did
Yeah,
not
neither did
realize
I.
that's what that line meant. That's pretty cool.
yeah. And it's interesting because that's part of the catalyst for the plot of this episode is his question is about some resecting the abdomen. And my understanding, and I wasn't able to look this up before the show. This is my disclaimer of this is purely my medical knowledge that I've learned from MASH. I believe what they're arguing here, and I will have to look it up afterwards. And if I'm wrong, I will make a note of it here in the post edit. It's if the intestines are wounded badly enough, do you drain it and try to stitch it together, or do you just chop that section out and stitch it? So I think that's what they're talking about, but I'm gonna have to
No
look it up
idea.
post show because I did not have the time to look it up before. And if I'm wrong, I will put a little insert here of me sharing what the correct information is because I do not want to just be like, "Yep, this is what they're talking about," and I'm just gonna assume I'm correct. But essentially, it's despite Frank being the ranking surgeon, everyone acknowledges Hawkeye is the more experienced and better surgeon. So they're going to him with questions. And it's even proven that Frank's like, no, this is how you're supposed to do it. And Hawkeye's like, no, you're a year behind in medical journals. There's a new way to do it that is better, safer, etc. We're doing it this way because I say so.
Yeah,
So
we can't gloss over the best line in so far, in my humble opinion. If you were a proctologist, I'd tell you what to do with that book.
yes.
That
And
was
I
kind of
do
a nice line, yeah.
I do love that Alan Alda is able to play Hawkeye like, and we're gonna get this in the next episode. I've already kind of started thinking about the next episode because spoiler alert, we're gonna have a guest, and I'm so excited. My opinion on that on the next episode is actually increased a little bit, and I'll explain why in the next episode of the show. But Hawkeye, Alan Alda is able to play Hawkeye where even in serious moments he can like throw out a little joke to kind of break the tension. But
Yeah.
yeah, Hawkeye's like, look, yeah, I don't give a crap about the army, but when it comes to medicine, when it comes to being a doctor, no, everything else is secondary. And we're gonna even get a little bit of that here in a second with Henry. But speaking of Henry's office looking good. He's got some filing cabinets now. I'm very excited for him. His office is really coming together. I was very critical of it in the first episode.
Yeah, it's starting to have more of a lived-in feel to it. Yeah.
Yeah, very proud of him. But of course, Frank comes in all indignant. Frank Burns has to be the biggest horse's patoot on this post.
You think
And
so?
he doesn't know Frank is there. And poor Radar's like, he's
Oh,
standing right
Radar.
behind you.
Oh, Radar.
So Frank, as we'll see many episodes in the future, has a laundry list of complaints about Captain Pierce. Who wouldn't? But his charges include, and I quote, failure to salute a superior officer, failure to designate an officer by his rank, which is hilarious because in the very next sentence, Frank
He
breaks
says
that
Henry.
rule.
Yeah, he calls Henry, well, Henry.
Frank is accidentally a hypocrite a lot of times, and that makes him so much funnier because he doesn't even know he's being
He's
a
a
hypocrite.
he's a major hypocrite, not just
He's
a
a major hypocrite.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they drag Hawkeye over, and he is in what I think of as peak Hawkeye.
He does
in
look like he's
boxers.
in peak, not non-surgery Hawkeye. Yeah.
If I may, he is peak Jasky on a Sunday morning at camp.
That is disturbingly accurate. That could also be said about me any evening after 11 p.m. at camp. But yes. Yes.
I don't think you, now that you've seen a couple episodes of MASH, do you understand why I'm so goddamn jealous of your luxurious bathrobe?
Vaguely. Yes.
I want a dark red bathrobe so very badly.
Gotta hit up the thrift shops, my guy.
I gotta hit up that's the only way to get a good one, because you can't trust that if you order one off online until you feel it, it might be good.
Not be. Yeah.
Well, not only that, but Red, let's be honest for the sake of our audience. You and me, we are fun-sized. We are built for love.
I would not call you fun-sized.
As some of the girls I've dated, no. So you have to know that sometimes you just need.
I don't care if my bathrobe is the size of a tent. I want a nice. You know what? Hang on. This is a MASH podcast. I guarantee you, listeners, I know one of you has a luxurious bathrobe. I don't want your bathrobe. That's not what I'm getting at.
Want it?
If you would like to share where you got your luxurious bathrobe, because
yes,
I know someone out there saw Hawkeye's bathroom and went, I need it, just like I did. And they have one that is soft yet absorbent if needed for out of shower times. Mm-hmm. You have, it's not too heavy, but it's heavy enough that it has that nice bathrobe heft to it, you know? Mm-hmm. Internet, I'm begging you, send me sources for luxurious bathrobes. That's all I'll say.
Well, go head over to Twitter, folks, and go at the podcast with
I do not want pictures of you in your bathrobe. That's not what I want. I'm cutting that off at the pass before we get there.
Just send me pictures of the bathrobe.
Not picture. I don't want pictures. I want, this is the website I got the bathrobe link.
Oh, you just want the hard facts.
I want the hard facts. I do not need modeling photos of bathrobes, please. Thank you.
Well, now what am I supposed to do with the rest of my evening?
Anyway, Hawkeye comes over. He is looking peak Hawkeye. There's a discussion that the operating room is difficult because Hawkeye is always calling the shots. People are asking him questions. And Hawkeye's like, I don't care. You do it. And Frank's indignant because no one wants to listen to Frank because he's Frank.
Because he's Frank.
I got his face up on my monitor. Look at his dumb face. Anyway.
I can't believe it either. He's got a $35,000 car and 2 houses.
Yeah, I love that.
Actually, I did write that down just because it hurt me a little bit to hear $35,000 house.
God,
that hurt. That's the starting price of like a new car.
Yeah, I did that. I did the math on that. In today's money, that's like north of 300,000. It's like 350 something. That's the inflation difference. I think it's like 350 to somewhere between 350 and 400. So he's doing good. He's not doing crazy, but he's doing good.
Well, yeah. 3-year practice with, apparently some dedicated patients. So that's it's a living.
It is a living. Indeed, it
is. Henry, I gotta give McLean. I'm gonna be honest. If you, gun to my head, said Colonel Potter, Colonel Blake, I'm choosing Colonel Potter. That is not to discount Colonel Blake or McLean Stevens' performance as him. I think it's because we got Colonel Potter longer. I have more of a affection to him as a character. But again, watching this more analytically, I am appreciating McClane's portrayal of Henry even more. This episode's a good example, but there's an episode, again, teasers, there is an episode later in this season that I think a certain other actor gets a lot of credit for a scene, but McClane Stevenson should get just as much credit, and we'll get there. But Henry has a moment of command in this scene where he shuts Frank down and is like, look,
He does. He actually straightens up a bit, yeah.
Because, and it goes back to that thing with Hawkeye where they are doctors first, army officers second. They get their officer rank because they have to have it to conduct the business of an army hospital. They can't give orders to military personnel under them if they do not hold rank. And that's something that comes up in the next episode. But yeah, they're not officers as in they went to OCS, they went to West Point, they know how the military works. They're officers because they hold a skill the Army needs, and to perform that job, they need to be able to give instruction to lesser ranks. But in this moment, Henry is going to use that little bit of authority vested into him to say, no, I am the commanding officer. Frank, you are not going to be chief surgeon. I know that breaks the rules because you are higher ranking, but Hawkeye is the better surgeon. Period. End of story. And I think that that's a great, both character moment for all three of these guys, but specifically a good moment for Henry to be like, look, I didn't want to be in charge of a MASH unit. I got put in charge of a MASH unit, so I need to run it, because you have to remember, it's a hospital. It's not an army unit. It's also a hospital. And he's got to consider that they need to be able to do their job. So, yeah.
It's not all about Frank. Yeah.
Well, the thing, as we talk, I have the show going as I'm sure you guys do in your own right to it, but it's of course on mute with subtitles. And the nice thing about that is when it's muted, you get to really just study the facial expressions a lot more and really just enjoy the quality of acting. And I think so far, and I understand this is only episode 4, but this is probably so far my favorite scene in MASH. Just it's going back to what you talked about earlier. The characters are so much more themselves than ever before, and seeing them flash like this.
And it's a little bit more of a serious moment where it's like, and you still have the jokes like, oh, can I help? Can I help it if I'm not as rank as you? But you have this serious shouting match between Frank and Henry that I think is really the first time so far in the series we've gotten like even Henry says, we can't be so military, we can't be so GI that it keeps us from saving patients. And I love there's that little beat of silence after Henry says Pierce is the better doctor when the heat is on. Because there's both of them are looking at each other like, fight me on it. I dare you. And even Frank showing his hypocrisy again as he's going out the door at Henry. And I love that they did this both for comedy reasons and for Henry being like, look, I'm in charge still. Frank, failure to salute a superior officer. Because ultimately, Henry doesn't care, but it's kind of proving the point of Frank, none of what you are arguing about is as important as you think it is.
Well, you get the scene when Frank salutes, and, Henry salutes back, but Hawkeye's sitting in his chair.
He just waves.
Punching back, and he just wiggles his fingers goodbye.
We get
Frank.
Frank. We get Margaret and Frank, and I love this is a little gag that'll run through the series for a little bit. Margaret has some hydrogen peroxide, and she is dyeing the roots of her hair blonde.
Yes, she is. I kind of giggled when that came on the screen. I was like, oh.
And she's like, oh, I got this cut on my head. Like, okay.
But Frank, being so downtrodden and forlorn, wouldn't have noticed anyway.
Oh, yeah. And Margaret is kind of on Frank's side purely because, one, it's Frank, and two, it is military protocol to make the higher-ranking surgeon chief surgeon. And she's consoling him. He's on the verge of tears. And Margaret encourages him, it's not unmanly to cry. And he kind of, his upper lip stiffens a little bit, and he's like, "I won't give them the satisfaction." And he stands up, and then completely breaks.
Yep.
Oh, Margaret.
Oh.
And even Margaret's like, "Oh God."
Yeah.
Oh,
And what's hilarious is this isn't even the worst Frank tantrum we're gonna get.
Nope.
oh God!
We get so many worse Frank tantrums, and it's so great. We then come to the coronation, indoctrination,
The crowning.
The crowning.
the
I think it's the
crowning
crowning.
of Chief Surgeon Pierce.
I will say there was one thing that actually threw me off a little bit when they're mounting the photo of him
Mm-hmm.
on like the banner, and it's a picture of Hawkeye with just women's clothes on a laundry line behind him.
Yes.
They zoom in to get that like beautiful
Uh-huh.
but they have to freeze the frame because I'm
Yep.
assuming it like wiggled a bit or they kept zooming in, and the way the picture just stays still for like just a half a second too long.
You know, I
Just
didn't catch
very
that
choppy.
until this
Very, very
last watch
choppy.
through.
Yeah.
I did not catch that until this last watch through. I think that's just a fact of it
They were just
wasn't
working with
a
what they
long.
had.
Yeah, I bet the shot was cut like a few seconds too short, and they just needed
Mhm.
it to fill a space. It's whatever.
Yeah, I just noticed it was like, ooh, there's a little thing right there.
Why
Oh,
did they do that? 'Cause television. That's why.
'cause television. Yep.
Well, it
Hey.
just feels like one of those '80s movies that ends on a freeze frame of all the main
Oh,
characters
God.
jumping in the air.
Actually, that is what it reminded me of. But I will say, still, I mean, it's hardly anything. I mean, it's not like there was a Starbucks cup on a dining table. So
Not that that has ever happened anywhere else.
never in any high budget production TV shows. Nope.
No. We have the entrance of Chief Surgeon Pierce wearing a cowboy hat and cape, which, yeah, he is such an energy. Someone pinches his bottom. That's hilarious. I forgot that happened.
Yes, he just gives him a look. Yeah. Uh-huh. I will say I do appreciate the toilet paper handrails being deployed by using a plunger as a roller. That is
Yes.
ingenious. I love it. More of this, please.
I'm telling you, there are moments in this show that I just go, that's camp energy.
The big camp energy. Yeah.
Well, I gotta say, circling back, I'm rewatching this scene, and I'm not convinced that that bottom pinch was completely
Scripted?
unscripted,
Mm.
and I think that Alan Alda is just
He's really
trying
just turned around and just gave him a look like, ooh, okay.
this. I think
Yeah, that's one of those. Was it scripted? Maybe. But if it wasn't, that's brilliant that they kept it in.
Oh,
So Frank is typing a very angry letter to General Barker. And Margaret's reading, and I love her. She's like, oh, so $35,000. Type Frank.
Type Frank.
and all the time, Hawkeye is making his speech in front of his adoring public.
Mhm.
And and then you get like just this kind of tiny glimpse of the serious Hawkeye of the
You do. It's a good speech.
You get a glimpse of what the show this is a thing with the first season where they're gonna dip their toe, like they're gonna keep it very sitcom-y, what the network expects. There's even a scene later in this episode I'm gonna point out where it's like it's really striking when you see it, but it's an explanation of they're making the show what the network wants, and they're gonna dip their toe into little spots where it's like, look what we can do. But yeah, Hawkeye's let me say this, when we live in a cruddy situation speech is the first moment the show's like, hey, this is a funny sitcom, but we are in a foreign country in a war zone, and that's not a normal thing.
Mhm.
And
Well,
then
it's
they
the
ruin
first
it.
time
They
they
just
kind of
can't let it. They just can't let it be.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I do like that they let it hang in the air for a second before they crack the next joke, which is, what did I get on the humble meter? So.
And then we cut back to Frank and Margaret. Call me Tiger.
Oh yeah, and he
Meow.
knocks the typewriter on the ground, so they have to go call General Barker in,
Well,
direct.
no, I mean, yeah, but also you knock it on the ground because his oak leaves are quite literally suffocating Hot Lips.
Oh yeah, they're jabbing her in the
Uh,
neck.
Your oak leaves are killing me, Frank.
Yes. And we
Yeah.
get Hawkeye gets his official
The
Orb of
trappings of his office.
They even call it an orb.
his orb and scepter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm genuinely serious. At some point, if this podcast goes on as long as I would like it to, which is of course this series finale, the three of us need to get together and recreate this scene. We need to have Anthony holding the orb, and then
I
Jasky.
have had thoughts. I've had some thoughts about some things, and
Oh.
I'll leave it at that. I have resources available to me to do potentially cool
You
things.
got a
And I'm
dirty
gonna move
volleyball
on.
and a plunger? Is that what
I've
you
got better. I've got more than I've got ideas. But
Okay.
let's get through season 1 and we'll see if those ideas need to pan out.
Okay. Okay.
We get Sorrel Book again as General Barker. Unfortunately, this will be the last time we see him as General Barker, I believe, which is sad because I think he is great in this episode. He was kind of a meh, like he was there and present in the last episode, but we get to see him on his wandering through camp, and I think he is just fun. I really like General Barker.
It is.
I'm okay.
Hot Lips also blackmailed him, but yeah.
Well,
I mean,
when she called him, she quite literally says, "Oh, you ought to get up here for the good of your command."
But also,
Okay, Hot Lips.
it's the running gag. It's the running.
Yeah.
I never took that as blackmail though. I just like, oh, you can't. For the good of your command, you can't possibly have this rapscallion be chief surgeon of your finest medical unit. No.
Yeah.
I never took it as blackmail, but it's very much implied that Margaret
Diddle?
knows
Margaret
a
gets
lot
around.
of generals. Margaret knows a lot of generals.
Knows a lot of generals. Yeah.
I guess you could say she has a general knowledge.
If I
No, let him sit in silence with his shame. So the boys are playing poker.
They're
playing poker with the weirdest rule sets, which
I feel like they have just been making different ones up on every take, and this is like take 7.
And I love the. I need to find the little readout of what Hawkeye says the rule set is. 3s and 9s are wild. You can buy a new card on an open 4, except February, which has 28.
So, is this even poker? The only kind of poker I have ever played is Texas Hold'em, and I am okay admitting that.
No,
Or is this just these guys bullshitting at this point?
No, if they're opening and drawing cards, then it's not stud. It's called 5-card draw. I know how to play it. We'll play it sometime. Okay. It's very interesting. It's essentially you have a set amount, like pair of jacks or better can bet to open. If no one has a pair of jacks, then everyone antes again and the cards get shuffled and redealed. So it's a game you need to have at least 3 or 4 people to play without, and so people can open. But it's a game that's very easy where you can set rule sets like aces or wild or stuff like that. But it's a little bit quicker of a game of poker to play. But anyway, so General Barker comes in.
That's a lot of respect for the place.
Exactly. But essentially the optics right now are there is a wounded patient in pre-op who requires surgery to save his life. That is the information the general's been given. It's not incorrect information, but it's not necessarily
just the whole
true.
Information.
Yeah. So Hawkeye could be operating on him right now, and the way he explains to the general is, we're going to wait for his pulse and pressure to stabilize, and we're watching him very closely. And fairly enough, General Barker is like, "You're playing poker. You're not watching anything." He's like, "No, the nurse is coming to tell me, like things are handled. We're good." If Hawkeye has a wounded patient, and he's calm about it, that's a good benchmark of things are probably fine. So, and I will say, I like this back and forth between Sorrel and Alan Alda. I think I wish General Barker would stay around because I think Alan Alda and Sorrel Brook have a really good chemistry on screen. I really do like it.
I will say that every episode where Hawkeye refers to a general as dad immediately gets a plus 0.25 boost at my final score.
God.
No, I'm genuinely serious. I think that is the funniest bit. The first time I heard Hawkeye go, "You bet your belly button, Dad!" I
Bet
burst.
your belly button.
It threw me. Yeah.
And the thing you forget, I don't know that you guys picked up on in episode 1. I that was probably obvious there, and it's obvious here too. Both, if you're the commanding officer of the medical wing of a army, you're a surgeon. Barker says, I'm a surgeon myself. Back in episode 1, General Hammond was a surgeon as well. So it's like, it's not that these generals are like, charge up the hill fighting generals who don't know anything. Barker is a surgeon and arguably could, and he even does try to order Hawkeye to do the surgery, but knowing Hawkeye, it's like, look, either he says, do it yourself, or wait for me to do it. I don't care. Because ultimately, the kid's probably going to be fine either way. Hawkeye just wants to make sure he does it correctly / safely / whatever. So
Just so many good gags in this little back and forth too. You have, of course, the you haven't heard the last of this. Well, I wasn't listening to the first of it.
exactly. The
And
general walking into the trash can.
you're in deep trouble. No, I can beat a pair of twos.
There you go. And then we get the great montage of Barker trying to find Henry. And he runs into so many interesting things. The first is a soldier with poncho sneaking, best case scenario a nurse, worst case scenario a lady of the night, to his tent. Yeah. And I love how the general just looks at this, wipes his head, and is like, whatever.
Like he has so many larger fish to fry than whatever this guy's doing. Like,
and
that doesn't
then
even register on the radar.
in probably my favorite freeze frame of this, like, favorite screenshot of this entire episode, he kicks the doors to Henry's office open, and sitting at Henry's desk with the lays from the party still on, reading a comic book, smoking a cigar, and holding a glass of brandy is Radar, which, if there was ever a moment that was the least like the Radar we are eventually going to get, it is this one. The future Radar would not violate the Colonel's desk, his brandy, his cigars, or talk back to a general like he's about to. But I love... This is such a mood, and I want to live it.
The exchange too. It's just it's so wonderful. Sorrel, of course, asking, "Does anyone on this base sleep?" To which
Only on duty. No, my favorite is, "What are you doing?" "What, sir?" "Doing. DOING. Doing. What are you doing?" "Listening to you spell doing, sir." I love it so much.
Oh, and then, of course, who could forget? We finally...
Hang on. I gotta back up, because I do love this as well. Because I think I've used this line on my dad before. "Doesn't Colonel Blake mind you smoking his cigars and drinking his brandy?" "Well, I don't mind, sir, and I figured as long as one of us is reasonable." I may or may not have used that.
Joke there.
I may or may not have used that to justify why I absolutely should be allowed to take cigars out of my dad's humidor and not go buy my own. But
how did that go for you?
I now buy my own cigars.
Yeah.
I love... And Radar, not batting eye, "Doesn't he mind?" "Yes, sir, very much." Then why are you doing it? But yes, Ethan, you started to mention it. Would you like to continue with what we get to experience for the very first time?
If I may, is that okay with the both of you?
Go for it.
The illustrious Sorrel Brooks walks out. He storms out of his meeting with Radar, comes around the corner, and is stopped.
He's moving. He is moving.
He is stopped.
For a stumpy little short-legged round man, he is moving across that camp.
Mhm.
He's stopped by Corporal Klinger in full female officer's attire, sporting an M1 Grand on
More
guard.
accurately, he is wearing a wax uniform, Women's Auxiliary Corps.
Ooh.
But yes, that is Jamie Farr as Corporal Maxwell Q. Klinger, who, believe it or not, this was supposed to be his one and only appearance in the show.
Really?
He was brought on as what's called a day player. So he was cast like he's not an extra. He's not like a background, in the background eating the same bagel for an hour and a half while they film a scene. He was brought on to play a named character, one off for a gag. And then they're like, we'll bring him back here and there through season 1, and eventually he'll get rotated out for some other on-screen gag. But he became kind of like William Christopher and Father Mulcahy. They ended up using him so much, a little bit here and there, and more and more and more and more. And they, like I said last episode, both of them end up becoming main contracted cast members. And there is something about this scene that I found in my little notes and research. This is Klinger's first appearance chronologically in the release order of the series. This whole scene had to get reshot by Gene Reynolds and Larry Gelbart. This is the one scene in the show that E.W. Swackhammer did not direct. He did direct a version of this scene that did not get used. And this is something Jamie Farr has commented on, Gene Reynolds and Larry Gelbart have commented on. Klinger dresses in women's clothes purely to get out of the army, no other reason. E.W. Swackhammer filmed this scene not maliciously, but he filmed Klinger as incredibly effeminate. Like concerningly so, given that it was the early 70s. And Gene Reynolds has always gone on record saying Klinger is not effeminate, he's not homosexual, he's not any of these things. The dresses are purely a gag to get out of the army. So Gene was so uncomfortable with how this scene was originally shot that he went back and like, we need to frame this differently. So, and it ends up working out because as the show goes on, you'll notice Klinger's always in a dress, but he's also got the hairiest forearms known to man and is usually chomping on a cigar or some other nonsense. So it's clearly he's just wearing the dresses hoping that someone will boot him out of the army so he can go back home. And as I think about it now, we're going to see a lot of outfits from Klinger. I think it would be a shame not to at least give our opinion on them as we go, because he has some amazing pieces in his wardrobe. The WAC uniform is a pretty standard one. Nothing special. First appearance, it's all right. Could be a little tighter. The hat's kind of off. He's unbuttoned.
He's going for a psycho. He's not,
True. Fair. But you can tell this is very early. This is the gray period of Klinger. He's very disheveled. His full fashion sense has not come into vogue, and I'm very upset about it.
Well, okay, but hold on. No, he's fully committed because he's not in boots. He is in stilettos. Standing guard, walking guard on an army base in Korea.
If there's anything in this show that I can say I am amazed an actor did, is the amount of times you see Klinger walking or see Jamie Farr walking around in heels or pumps.
Well,
God bless him.
Off in them. He's so good in them. He just prances off like he was born in them, and I respect him for it.
And I love that despite this being the first time we see Klinger, Barker already knows who he is. You're still trying. We haven't even met Klinger, and he's still, quote unquote, trying to get out on a Section 8. The legend of Klinger is too big for this show. It surpasses the bounds of this show. But yeah, Barker's like, I'm not giving you a discharge. So Klinger, well, I just have to keep trying, Mary. And he does. He bounds off like the majestic Lebanese being that he is. Oh, I need to watch this again. Hang on. Bonk, bonk, bonk. Yep, and there he goes. Bark is like, whatever.
Friend or foe?
Exactly.
Uh,
All right. So Barker storms into a tent where he catches Nurse Ginger Bayless and Spear Chucker playing strip dominoes. Yeah. And strip dominoes. And this is another one of those comments I'm going to make where I don't want to have to preface this, but I feel like there are people in this world that will be like, well, why, this doesn't matter. Why are you pointing it out? It's like, it does, because the show was made in 1972 and is set in the 50s. Very obviously, the only two African American characters on the show are, of course, seeing each other and dating, which is a very dated trope in TV and movies. But we'll see in the future that they break that trope very quickly in the series. This is very much, I think this is very much because of when MASH was made, you're going to see a lot of the old Hollywood and TV tropes getting swapped out for the 70s to the 80s is a very weird transitional time for some of this stuff, for both on a when we'll talk about it a little bit next week, both on a representation and portrayal sense of different cultures, lifestyles, etc., etc. So it's looking back on it from 2022, it's very obvious, like, yes, those two people have the same skin color. Of course they should be seeing each other. That's just the way the world works. Bangs fist on table. So yeah, it stands out a little bit 50 years later, but it doesn't make the scene bad or anything. It's just something I noticed.
Yeah.
It's whatever. I love that. And then as General Barker leaves, thank you, go to bed. And Spear Chuck is like, you heard what the man said. And Ginger just gives him a look like, honey, no.
Sure. Trying to be smooth. Almost had it.
Almost had it.
Speaking
of smooth, Frank and Margaret are in the next tent over.
Good old. That was at both times one of the smoothest and roughest interactions I've seen Frank have with the commanding officer.
Yep. So yeah. Margaret's trying to sneak Frank out of her tent, and Barker's like, I'll see you in a minute. And Margaret is petrified. I love Loretta Swit's face through this whole scene. Bet this looks funny. Bet it doesn't. And he just walks away. Oh. Look at Loretta. She's just like paralyzed with fear against the door. Hang on. I'm just looking at both their faces right now.
She's afraid to even look at him.
And Frank's just staring straight ahead with that dumb smirk on his face. Oh no. They're like, how are we not getting yelled at right now? And we finally find Henry. Oh boy. Henry was digging worms for fishing.
He was.
At 2:00 in the morning.
Yes, he was.
As someone who enjoys the art of angling, what the fuck, Henry? It's 2 a.m. Go to bed.
Don't question what Henry needs to do in Henry.
They're called night crawlers for a reason.
That is a fair point.
Is it? I have absolutely no idea. That could be completely true or completely false.
I also love
the resident biologist.
Oh God,
I have no idea.
All right, I was about to say, look what you did. I also love that Henry is very clearly holding a fake plastic, like Berkeley worm. Like, it's very clearly a fake worm, and I love it.
They just couldn't find any worms in LA at probably whatever time of year they were filming.
Well, I mean, the Actors Guild places such a high premium on worms, you couldn't afford to have one on set for more than 5 minutes. You got to shoot the shot.
Well, also get animal control involved. Yeah.
Oh yeah, PETA. Mm-hmm. And think about the studio lights; those are hot. The worm needs to be moist. You have to rent the worm spritzer.
It's a whole RV. Climate control.
Yeah.
Well, and you guys are forgetting about
honestly
the great worm union racket of.
Oh
my God, the unions. Oh yeah,
see, no. It's just easier to go to your local bait and tackle and buy a plastic worm. Honestly,
that's true. It's true.
Hashtag more worms in Hollywood. All right. moving on from that
Now
random
that we've done
tangent.
our social justice for the day, I feel that I've earned the right to laugh at the joke. Do you realize that you've got a man in a skirt out there? Yeah, well, luckily he's got the legs for it.
Which, let's be honest, Jamie Farr does.
Yeah,
You do. You
absolutely.
do.
So Henry and Barker finally catch up to Hawkeye, and Hawkeye is scrubbing for surgery, just like he said, at 3:00, and proceeds to tear the general a new a-hole in the nicest way possible. Like, see, I told you I knew what I was doing. Let me ask you a bunch of questions about why I'm doing what I'm doing and make you give me the answers you know I already know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was the most polite, hey, fuck you, I've ever seen. And Hawkeye isn't doing it out of malice. He's doing it because he knows
knows
that
he's
what he's
right.
doing is, yeah, he knows he's right.
Yeah.
And again, it's not an arrogant I know I'm right. It's a hey, now that you see the full picture, you know I'm right, right?
Right.
Right.
Right?
Left? No, right. So Barker realizes that he's been kind of sent on a wild goose chase by Frank and Margaret, and is content with Hawkeye being chief surgeon, despite him being a little unorthodox. But he met again. Barker and Henry and Hawkeye are all in the same boat of whatever medically needs to happen to make sure we save more patients supersedes everything, which is fantastic. And then Klinger comes back.
Comes back in a big way.
And this is one of my favorite lines delivered by a non-main cast member in the series. The man's naked. It's he delivers it so well, and his voice is so perfect for it. The man's naked. I'm gonna play it like 7 times through this section of the podcast. There it goes again.
It's his facial expressions when he goes, "Halt! Who goes there?" And he just kind of looks at him side eye.
And Hawkeye and Trapper, Klinger, put on a dress or something.
At least a slip.
At the very least. Yeah. I am happy that we
I
got
love.
Klinger. On top of this amazing episode, we also get Klinger?
We
Like,
also get
wow.
Klinger.
Wow. What a cherry on the top, eh?
Yep.
Uh,
And I
yeah.
backtracking, I do love the may I make a suggestion about Major Burns? Give him a high colonic and send him on a 10-mile hike with full pack. It's like basically get Frank out of here for a little bit. He needs a break. So yeah, Chief Surgeon Who. I very much agree that this might be the best episode so far.
Oh yeah.
And on that note, do you guys have any other thoughts about this episode in general before we get to rating it?
I feel like we covered most everything I had notes on. Yeah. It's just a solid episode.
Very
I didn't
solid.
even have notes and we covered everything. I'm feeling pretty good.
Nice. Well, who would like to go first?
Jess,
Well,
you've been quiet. You
well, yeah, I guess I'll go ahead. Let's see. Out of 5, I would give this episode. See, I don't want to jump the gun and just give it a straight 5, right? Because my frame of reference is the previous 3 episodes, so not a lot to go off of. But this is the best one so far. But there could be better ones. So I'll give it a solid 4.8. It is
Okay.
amazing, but I don't know if it's quite the best of the best, if that makes sense. But it's definitely up there. So 4.8 out of 5. Good episode. Wasn't really bored throughout it. New characters. Yeah. It's the mashiest mash.
All right. Wilson, what about you?
I agree with everything Jasky said right down to the rating. I am also giving it a 4.8 because I agree with him. We're only 4 episodes in, and the subject matter, the cast even changes quite a bit coming up. So I'm gonna temper my expectations and keep that in mind, but also recognize that this episode had tension. It had jokes. It had a genuinely good story. It honestly, going forward, depending on how the rest of the season is, if someone were to ever ask, "Hey, I want to watch MASH. Where should I start?" I might just straight up tell them, skip the first three, go to episode 4. Because I
Like
think that,
Charlie Lee, though.
it's a good point, but god damn, if this isn't just, I really love the way that that listener put it as the second pilot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
man.
I think I joke, but I think that's a good, like, go watch season 1, episode 4, and if you like that, then go watch 1, 2, 3, and so on.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like Star Wars. Like, start with episode 4 and watch them in order. Then if you vibe in this universe, then go check out the ancillary, the prequels, sequels, shows, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
for me, I was gonna give this kind of between, not 5, but between 4 and 5. But the more
Mm-hmm.
I watched it back, and the more I thought about it, because again, me being the one with the prior knowledge of all things to come, I am going to jump the gun, and I am going to give this a 5 out of 5.
Ooh.
Because the reason being, it is, like I said earlier, it is firing on all cylinders for me. It is it the pure refined version of what we're going to get later? No. Does it hit all the right chords? Yes. Are the characters on point? Yes. Mainly, the reason I gave it a 5 is I cannot think of any negatives to this episode. And if there's no negatives and we're rating out of 5, then it's a 5, right? Like, that's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm at. Genuinely, I was gonna give this episode a lower rating because I try not to think about it ahead of time, but when you watch the show and you have to wait a week to record, you can't help but think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I watched the show back and took notes and thought about what I was gonna say, its rating slowly creeped up over the week. So yeah, I'm gonna give it the first 5 of the podcast just because I think the character development and the story, and it wasn't a scheme a week. We didn't even talk about that. It's not a scheme. No one's scheming anything. It's more of a, the plot is happening because the plot is happening, not because, you know, a character is trying to make it happen. Does that make sense? It's not doesn't fall into that same category like these first 3 episodes have. So yeah, I think this episode just hits all the right spots. So with that, let's see what some of the audience had to say as I shuffle my screens around here. From the Twitter. Oh, I forgot. We did have one additional comment, but it actually does apply to this episode as well. Donut Eater 111 mentioned about our previous episode, Requiem for a Lightweight. He agreed what we said about the cast members, Father Mulcahy, and he mentioned Klinger, so this kind of carries for both episodes. They're both great additions and glad they got as much growth as they did. He didn't always love Frank, but he's still technically his least favorite character, but he's grown to appreciate what he and Larry Linville brought to the show. And we had mentioned that last week that Frank is Frank, but Larry Linville's portrayal of Frank is fantastic. And we mentioned we were growing to appreciate it as we watched the show. So wanted to throw that out there. Chief Smash Forever says 4 out of 5. Very good episode. Gives Hawkeye time to shine. Definitely one of the better first season episodes with great humor. I always think of Hawkeye with his plunger and cowboy hat immediately when this episode comes to mind.
Yeah.
Donut Eater 111. It was Donut Eater 111 who said it feels like a second pilot introducing the crazy cast through the eyes of the general. It's a bit silly, but there's some classic moments like Klinger's introduction. The chief surgeon aspect is a good basis for the Frank Hawkeye dynamic going forward, and I like the way it ends. Oh, yeah, we didn't even mention there's something that happened at the end of the episode. Pause real quick. We do have a little bit of, there's still tension between Frank and Hawkeye, but at least Frank is willing to say, hey, I need help to Hawkeye, because despite being a terrible doctor, he somehow still wants to save his patient. And Hawkeye commits one of the dumbest faux pas the show has medically. He goes from one patient to another, and does not change gloves. And I notice it every time, and it frustrates me. But anyway. So yeah, Donut Eater gave it a 3 out of 5. Okay. And I don't want to say our favorite fan, but certainly our favorite
recurring?
No, our favorite screen name for a fan so far. This lightsaber kills fascists. 4 out of 5. The first truly great episode of the series. I agree with that statement very much.
Oh, yeah.
Possibly because it's partly based on a situation from the novel, which is true. They took this story straight out of the original novel.
Okay. Okay.
We get a deeper insight into the characters, and Frank is more of a true antagonist, not a buffoon. And Klinger! Exclamation point. And then he went on to mention something, and I'll read this, and it's something to think about as we go on. There's a certain grittiness and lived-in feel to this episode, and the first 4 seasons in general, that appeals to me and lends a veneer of verisimilitude. Verisimilitude? Oh god, that's a word. Verisimilitude that is lacking in later seasons. This episode is all the better for it. The rat-tat nature of the dialogue and the one-liners really gets in this episode. You can see what the show, at least in its early form, will become. And that thought is a great summary of why I bumped it up to 5. This is a very nice condensation of what MASH is going to become. So, and then from the Instagram, we got a lot of comments this week. Thank you all very much, by the way. From the Cigar Sportsman, our friend Greg over at Beyond the Humidor.
Hi, Greg.
Hi, Greg. His name's Greg. Complete 5, one of the best episodes in the first series. We see Hawkeye at his best in the OR, and Frank being, well, Frank. And then another comment we got on Instagram that I'll share real quick. Benjamin Perlman just found your podcast and started from the beginning, really enjoying what I heard so far, and that made me really happy. So, hi, Benjamin.
Thank you.
Very cool. Very cool.
Very cool. So yeah, Chief Surgeon Who, that pretty much wraps us up for this episode. Any closing thoughts?
No. I mean, we'll be returning from various sabbaticals.
Oh, yeah.
By next episode, so.
If one of us returning from a sabbatical through the beginning of this episode off the rails as far as it did, 2 of us returning from a sabbatical is...
Oh, boy.
And we have a guest next
episode.
Oh, sweet. Prepare for a 7-hour
sideways.
Prepare for a 7-hour episode of Best Care Anywhere.
Oh man.
But yeah, the next episode is The Moose, and it has nothing to do with the animal.
Oh.
Sadly. We need more moose. Hashtag more moose and MASH. We just be throwing out all sorts of dumb hashtags, don't we?
That's what all podcasts do.
That's what all podcasts do. Good. I'm glad we're on track.
Well, actually, unlike other podcasts, we don't have illusions of grandeur. You know, we aren't expecting anyone to actually use them.
Also true.
Wow.
Well,
I swear to God, if I see hashtag more moose and MASH, I'm going to be both happy and upset, and I don't know how to feel about it.
I'll be like a proud dad who's disappointed the direction their child's going. Yeah.
And with that, folks, we will see you next week. Hopefully I don't die in the wilderness, and hopefully Jasky wants to come back from South Lake Tahoe, because it is beautiful.
I might just stay there. You never know.
All right. We will see you later.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
So long. Farewell. Auf Wiedersehen. Goodbye.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen to all of you.
The time has come for us to say sayonara. My heart will always be yours for eternity.